Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Unexpectedly, we have brand new official marathon news today. Don't mind me, I'm in my stream setup, but I wanted to kind of react to the information that we got and give you guys my thoughts as soon as possible, so I thought I'd just do it in the most streamlined way possible. So we're going to go through the video. What it is a message from Joe Ziegler, the director for the game, and it's basically exactly what Paul Tassi had said might come before the next official gameplay announcement in his article from a few weeks ago. So it's just going to be Joe Ziegler giving us a few details about where the game is at in development, and confirming a few things that we'll talk about as we get to them, but it is nothing special, okay? This is just a dude basically sharing his thoughts, although I'm very excited for this information. If you're expecting gameplay information, or really for them to clarify on any of the things that have been like the major points of discussion within the community, they're not really doing that here. They're just kind of giving us reassurance that the game is continuing and where they're at in development, so that maybe some of the fears can be quelled in terms of people who are thinking that it's getting canceled. So without further ado, let's jump into it. I'll show you guys a few of the relevant parts as to what he's saying, and then I'll give you guys my thoughts on it, obviously. And if you want to go watch the main video, which I recommend checking it out at least once, listening to everything he's got to say, I'll have the link to the full video down below. All right, let's do it.
It's an intense game. So in that sense, we like to say it's a game that's not for everybody, but if you are interested in sort of having that intense survival experience and having a game where the stakes really matter and you feel like they're challenged to survive in a really, really harsh and interesting world, then Marathon's just right up your alley. So yeah, hopefully that sounds appealing to you.
Okay, so the first 40 seconds of what he's talking about is just exactly what I explained, saying this is a video, I'm Joe Ziegler, here's what we're going to talk about today. And then he spends about the next minute basically saying Marathon is an extraction shooter. Now, I think dedicating this amount of time to confirming that it is exactly what they said and wrote hundreds of times over, and it's the only official thing, is a little bit silly. But I am glad that they're kind of confirming, obviously after kind of these hero shooter rumors, it's getting canceled, these types of things, people are kind of doubting the state that it's in. So basically he spends a minute just confirming that it is a hero shooter, it's PvPvE, and it's exactly what they've been saying it is for, I guess over a year and a half now. The thing that I do like that he points out here is that it is kind of like an intense style of game, and that it's not going to be for everybody. Extraction as a genre is niche, and although they are giving it the Bungie spin, which will probably make it more interesting for a wider audience, it is still like a niche gameplay experience that you may not like if you're not into kind of intense PvP situations that require a lot of thinking on your feet and complex multiplayer gameplay.
We give you a lot of different tools to do a lot of different things inside the game. There's a ton of loot that you can find. There is weapons, there's equipment that you can equip to yourself that changes your stats or gives you sort of tweaks some of the things that you can do inside of the game. But beyond that, there's also this other layer that is what we like to call our runners, which is sort of the template by which you equip all that stuff to. So each runner has like a small subset of abilities, and on top of that, you get to customize however you want. Thinking about sort of what you want to accomplish inside the game, you might equip different types of gear to your character, to your runner, and then go on those runs with that gear in mind.
All right, so the next minute and a half or so, which I kind of skipped through and showed you little kind of relevant pieces of, is basically him describing in further detail how kind of an extraction shooter works in terms of you have gear and utility and items that you can pick up. They assist you because each device performs a separate action, which can interact with the gameplay world, kill enemies, heal yourself, etc. Then he kind of gets into the hero shooter aspect of it without using the word hero, which is kind of funny to see him describe a system by which we have preset characters that seem to have names, or I guess like at least distinct features, and that you get to customize those individuals. This is much more sounding like something along the lines of Apex Legends, which I believe is something that we talked about during the Oops leaks and Paul Tassi kind of leak situation, somewhere between those articles. I know we kind of referenced that concept. And he's going to go on, he's going to show us a few things that obviously seem to indicate that these are selectable individuals. So it's not like you're picking out just a run-of-the-mill A series, B or C or S or P series Biomata and then fully customizing your loadout. It's more so like there are characters that seem to have very specific stylistic design choices, and then there are elements to that character that are modular in nature. So you can choose, it seems like, different perks or gear or abilities, and then that'll customize how you choose to play the game, or customize, I guess, the abilities you have in game. But it still is going to be assigned to a pre-made kind of individual character, which, and like I said, coming up, he's going to show us has kind of a preset look to them that seems very distinct. So I would say at this point, pretty confidently, that it is like a class/hero system, in that you're only going to be able to change what you bring in and the stuff that is attached to them. But it is interesting to note that they are very strongly seeming to avoid that word hero, probably because of the backlash that they have seen earlier this year. And I think specifically the only utility items that he seemed to name were mines, grenades, and healing items. But obviously, if you've played an extraction shooter, you can kind of get the general gist of the type of things, equipment otherwise that you'll pick up in game that would be beneficial for you.
Our game is obviously set in the IP of Marathon, but what we're doing with that world is we're taking a lot of the familiar elements, especially a lot of the things around the mysteries and the kind of eeriness and sort of like the, how do I put it? Like the psychological kind of creepiness of the entire IP as it exists before. But we're layering on some elements that we think really help modernize it and also bring it to a new story that we can sort of, and a new world that we can sort of like continue to update and delight all of you with over the course of time.
Okay, so that's kind of the next relevant section I think that comes. And obviously for me, as somebody who's pretty dedicated and thoughtful in terms of the Marathon narrative and lore and larger universe, and kind of understanding how these elements and story little tidbits come into play in the ARG, and how we've kind of speculated about how they're going to play out. This is kind of a piece that is obviously very interesting to me. I do think it's cool that he's kind of like narrowing in on this idea that there's a psychological creepiness to the original games. I think that's like a fair thing to say. That's true in many ways. The psychological deterioration of AI and people on board the Marathon is kind of like the primary story element, in terms of that's results in the four arriving on the Marathon. It results in Durandal leaving to go to Lohuan. It results in the Trizeme being used. There's a lot of very big key themes that kind of result from unsettling situations like sentient AI, encounters with alien species. And even if you kind of look at the sound design choices used in Marathon 2 and Infinity, where they step back from that soundtrack to only have that ambient kind of noise to further immerse you into this creepy world. With that being said, the kind of contrast to that is the fact that there were a lot of very kind of quirky character designs, a lot of very bright colors, a lot of kind of esoteric structures on Lohuan. So it is kind of a balance of those two things. And I would never say that any of the original Marathon games were, horror inspired, at least, or at least primarily kind of trying to evoke that emotion, that they were more so action, sci-fi, run and gun FPS kind of games. But I do understand the idea of kind of wanting to continue some of the more complex, unsettling themes that were in the background of the original trilogy. And obviously, as kind of I've covered the ARG, I think a lot of those things are coming over. What I'm not kind of a huge fan of is kind of, with this part in particular, but really it applies to a lot of the parts, is that there's zero specifics given here. So, I mean, really from what he's saying, we're gleaning no additional information. I mean, I think even ultimately in my notes here that I have written down, let me see. So they're modernizing and continuing the story, which obviously we know that from the last one. We're going to bring some of these story elements to a modern light, and we're also going to continue it in interesting ways that'll kind of pique the interest of a modern science fiction audience. So glad to hear that they're doing that, but it's not really any additional information for us or anything for us to go off of, which, like I said, is like a lot of the information here. Just kind of confirming the general ideas that we probably have all had as people who've been kind of looking out and thinking about Marathon. But I would specifically say this gives us basically zero direction to kind of go off of in terms of what we can expect, as far as like where the narrative is going to go or how any of these elements are going to play out or how they're even going to choose to explore it, whether that be kind of like seasonal content or a main narrative baked into the initial release. We don't know. So there's really very little updates or additional information provided with the lore aspect of this video.
Where the game is at right now, there's a variety of different things at different states inside of the game. Some things are a little bit more complete, like our environments are starting to come together in a really, really beautiful way. Some of the character models we've been iterating through, so they're coming together, but they're not fully there yet. All of these things are on track. They're not all together, but when they all do come together, we really, really are looking forward to showing you what that looks like, especially in play.
Okay, so right before he jumps into kind of the sneak peek little images that we're going to get to see, he talks about the state of the game right now. And basically, to just sum it up for you, it is not at a state where it can be shown. They have not dialed in on the enemy designs, and they're able to do like play tests. That's basically kind of like the three key takeaways there. And then in a little bit, he's going to talk about how they want to expand the playtest. So going into 2025, that's going to be something that they do. I'm assuming like stress testing servers, maybe doing an open beta or something like that. It is a little disappointing to hear that they don't feel comfortable, like they don't feel like it's in a state to where we could even get like some alpha gameplay footage that might kind of illustrate what the actual mechanics of the game look like that they're working on, especially because, we've heard about this, coming up on this upcoming year will be 2 years ago now. But obviously, I have a lot of positive sentiment towards how it must be looking right now, just given the reaction that we've seen from the playtests. But from the game director's mouth, Joe Ziegler is saying that it's not at a state right now where they would feel comfortable giving us a gameplay trailer or something like that. So that's basically where it's at, and then they hope to expand playtests in 2025. And I can't really glean from this video whether or not it's going to be a 2025 or 2026 release. My assumption would be that if we kind of looking at this pre-order stuff potentially coming in the beginning of 2025 with Destiny, we have a supposed tie-in item that Game Post article is talking about, and they're looking to expand playtests so kind of with many more people, which would make me think that it's some sort of opened or closed beta test type thing. My assumption would be that we would be looking at kind of mid to late next year in terms of a release window. But they do make a point here to not specifically name like an exact time or date or even a time frame for when the game could be coming out.
One of the images that is going to be showing up on your screen is of a runner that we have in our game. Its code name is currently Thief, which might give you an indication to how it plays inside of the game. I'm trying to avoid giving away too many of the details, but there's a lot of exciting ones. And we've been testing this character recently, and I will say there's a lot of hilarious stories that come from it, but also very, very crazy moments that this character contributes.
Why? Why are we avoiding giving away gameplay details? I personally, I'm not understanding that. I mean, if we're at this stage where, we're getting to see cool concept art, and they're excited about the game, I don't really see why it would hurt to kind of share some of those details, unless they are kind of worried that the details would indicate more of this kind of like class hero system that people are upset about. But honestly, the people who are going to be upset about it are going to be upset about it whether they know about it now or later. At least if you guys revealed a little bit more information, I feel like it would give us kind of a better concept or understanding of what we can prepare for or be excited about. But it is kind of funny to hear him just straight up say, I'm trying not to give away too much. Like, please, hey, give away more.
Contributes to the game. Then the other image we're going to show you right now, which you're going to see on your screen, is that of a character we codenamed Stealth. This runner is obviously a stealthy type of runner, and they sort of are in that space where when we talked about deception as a runner utility trait, they really embody it.
Okay, so the sneak peek that they give us, the actual kind of like, I would argue to say like the only truly new information that we kind of get from the Vidoc as a whole are these two images. One of a runner that they're calling Thief and one of a runner that they're calling Stealth. So obviously my first thing is like, okay, you're choosing to show us kind of two of the characters you're working on, and you chose to show the two who are very similar, which I think is kind of funny. Just in terms of like if you're trying to give us an idea of what the game's like, is it 100% stealth based? Is that kind of where all of the characters lean to, or are these just two of the characters? Is there a medic unit? Is there kind of like a bulldozer tank type unit? Is there like a high DPS with like a big machine gun type unit? It could be that varied, but from everything you're showing us, it seems like it's very sneak oriented. Like, and I don't know if that's saying something kind of like how the Forever Winter is kind of like stealth based. So all of the characters have elements of how they operate that kind of lead them to having, better opportunities in the stealth department, because that whole game is built around kind of hiding your presence from this overwhelming force. That doesn't seem to be anything that they're saying openly about Marathon, that it's an extraction shooter and there's a bunch of different ways to play, but the only two kind of concepts that they show us are stealth based characters. What I will say is that I love the look of both. I would say that stealth is kind of, from my eye, one of the most visually kind of different piece of art that we've seen come officially from Bungie around Marathon. It really has like a Blade Runner kind of vibe to it that I think is very cool. Kind of the tears in the rain and looking down, the glowing red eyes kind of has like almost a Terminator 80s kind of feel. Obviously, this is concept art, and I don't know if the last image was concept art or maybe like an in-game render or something different. That seemed much more in line with some of the clean graphic realism, but I do like kind of some visual disparity between the characters and the glowing stuff on stealth. I mean, I like the character design. I think it looks super cool. And I really like Thief too. The idea of having this Thief character who maybe has some sort of digital mental implants. Maybe it's like a cyber kind of security type of character as opposed to like a physical stealing stuff character. It could be like a net runner style runner. But I really like their design as well. Kind of almost like a bulkiness and then kind of a cuter, smaller head is something very interesting. And I think the designs on both the characters seem very cool. This is all we get though. No insight into what weapon are they carrying. Is there any allegiance do they have? How are they utilized? Just these images and the names to kind of go off of, which I'm sure I'll kind of dive in maybe at some point if I find additional stuff. A little more behind the scenes individually, I'll probably approach those topics. But generally, it just seems like cool character concept art. And also weird that they're not referring to them as heroes or classes, just as runners. So they're really, once again, trying to avoid that whole discussion.
Yeah, so that's it for some of the previews we have. Hopefully it's just a little bit of a taste. And
I am just going to interject here to say that I do find it like the style that they went for this is very heartwarming. It seems like these, the original Vidoc video was very produced. They had sets, they had crew like setting everybody up. They're sitting down to do guided discussions. It was very PR, very media kind of driven. And I do kind of like this very personal kind of, hey, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to be, down to earth and tell you what's going on with our game and what it's about as far as I can. It is like a huge change, so I'm interested to see kind of like what the reception will be, because this is not like a high level produced Vidoc where they're documenting the history of Bungie and interviewing all these high up people and these grandiose ideas. I mean, this is just a dude talking about his game that he's making, and he seems to really like it. I personally like that. I like that approach. I kind of like the sincerity behind it, and I'm glad to see that despite all of kind of the chaos in the games industry and inner stuff to Bungie as well, that this seems like pretty, from the heart. He's just speaking on what he can speak on, and being pretty genuine. I personally like that. I don't know if it'll be received like that, like I said, just because of the disparity of what they put out and probably what people were expecting, over a year after that kind of initial announcement might be something more. But we'll see. Maybe people will kind of see it the same way.
Speaking of 2025 as well, like we said before, we've been really iterating with our players. And so in 2025, we're going to be expanding our playtests a little bit wider and wider. Well, thank you all. I just want to say a lot of different things, actually. I have so much gratitude right now that I don't know if I could fit it all in this video, but what I will say is that thanks to the team, the team has done an amazing job, and they continue to advocate incessantly for all of you to make sure that the decisions we're making aren't holding back what you all care about. And every day there's endless debates focusing on what is the right way to continue to proceed to engage this game with you. Our goal is ultimately to make a game that all of you feel like is worth spending your time, and because time is so precious, like spending your time on, and really, really finding the fun and finding that storytelling space where you create the memories that you want to. Um, Second of all, thank you all for actually following us. I mean, we do this all for you. And so the interest that you show in sort of engaging with all of the content that we've created, with sort of wanting to learn more about our game, really fuels us on a daily basis. So I just want to say a very heartfelt thank you to you all. And we're excited to engage with you more in 2025 and beyond as we sort of bring this game to all of you to play. So thank you so much.
Okay. So they end with a very kind thank you to obviously the community that's excited and following this game's development, which I think is cool that they're acknowledging that. Obviously, there's a few of us kind of lunatics, like there's the me's and the bonds and the sados and the Tau City News and a lot of us out here who are very interested in getting to play this game and excited to see where it goes. So the acknowledgement that there is kind of a community around this game, even prior to its release, or a lot of official information, and despite the fact that there's been this kind of long waiting period, is cool, and it makes me kind of excited to see that Bungie is aware of those things and they're following kind of the general sentiment. I think that'll be beneficial when the game comes out and they're looking to kind of see what to do with the community moving forward and what we would like. So that's cool. It's good to hear. I think, I've said in a handful of streams and probably videos as well that I think it's time, Bungie says something. And so I appreciate this video, and I do think that they had to come out and make a public statement just because so much stuff has happened in just the games industry as a whole, also internally to Bungie. And there's a lot of hype around this game. People are excited to play it. And I think that just in 2024, it is easy for, Joe Ziegler to sit at his desk and just say, hey, guys, we're still working on this thing. This is what's going on. I think that's something that they should have done, and I'm glad that they did it, and that's something I said they should do. What I will say is that it does feel like there's certain kind of key things that people within the community very specifically are interested in. And it seemed very intentional that they didn't even attempt to broach or, even address these topics. Now, I don't know if that's Joe Ziegler's decision. That could be, Bungie higher up decision. That could be Sony decision in terms of what like literal details they're able to give. And I do think that he did his best in terms of reiterating to people like this is an extraction shooter experience. It's niche. It's not going to be for everybody. It's very intense. We're looking to bring kind of the old story of Marathon into the modern age and build out new ideas and kind of have our own events that will become, Marathon's story and canonical and all that. And I think that's good that he said that. But just considering how, we have these articles and, multiple major, massive YouTube channels making videos and stuff talking about a lot of the granular stuff about this game, whether that's the hero shooter stuff or if it's going to have any narrative at all after some of the leaks. The kind of release date time frame or, even a window would be something that I think at, coming up on 2 years after an announcement would be something that we would want to like give a general kind of time frame to, and that just doesn't appear in the video. So I do kind of wish that there were certain things that were handled with more specifics. I think that the runners that they're showing look cool. I think there's 100% an opportunity for people to be hyped on these, cybernetic mercenaries in these runner bodies and kind of their backstory. That is something that absolutely people would want to dive into and learn about. And we've had the name of 3 of them for, a year and a half, and people are already excited. Like, who is White Rabbit? What is her true allegiance? Kind of abilities does she have? I think this is something that people would care about. I just think that there was an initial backlash because there was, an article by IGN that called it hero shooters, and the people were expecting an extraction shooter. So I think if they are going to have that, they should have came out a little more specific. Say, hey, these are our classes. These are our heroes. Using the term runner, that is like an in-universe term for a mercenary who utilizes a biomata. So that's a little bit confusing, but also that feels like something that either maybe like strategy, marketing, legal, whoever it is may have decided like, we're not going to utilize this term until we show gameplay and can sell people on what we're doing, because maybe it is more towards the idea of like individual heroes that you can customize. Which is not a problem for me, really. Like, I like everything that we've seen and heard about so far, and being able to customize the utilities and the gears and the weapons that you bring in is the thing that makes it kind of like enjoyable for me. I'm less so kind of worried about being able to craft someone's face. But I could see how other people might want that. But regardless, I think that it would be something that maybe I would have hoped would have been kind of clearly illustrated. Also, talking about the playlists and the kind of timeline of things, we're hearing 2025. He doesn't say 2026 at all anywhere, but I almost kind of feel like it probably would have been something that would have been reasonable to do, is just say, hey, generally we're shooting for this time frame. Obviously, there's probably some issues with doing that, because if you miss that mark, I'm sure that affects the business side of things, which I'm obviously not tuned into. I don't know about game development. I don't know about marketing a major project from a multi-million-dollar company. But just as a consumer, as a player, someone who's looking into this, saying a general time frame as to how you want events to play out more specifically would have been helpful. And if you're talking about these things like kind of how you want to integrate the narrative from the original and some of the concepts expressed there, maybe more specifically saying like we're going to do it as seasons, or it is still live service. We're still going to have quests, like some of the kind of concepts that they introduced in the last Vidoc. If maybe they clarified specifically, like this, and this is confirmed, and this is what we're doing. But once again, that may just be something that didn't come across super well because of the format that they went with, which I also, like I said, enjoyed this format, and I think it is cool to just see them kind of sitting down and saying what they can say. I guess the last thing I kind of want to talk about is obviously the 3 images behind him. One is of the Thief Runner, which we got the larger resolution concept image of in the video. The other one is kind of the original shot of the Marathon in front of Tassi. And then I believe on the bottom right corner, I think that's like the image that was on the badges that we saw from the individuals who went to do the last play test, like Hidden Xperia and Scaro. I believe this was kind of the image that was on the back of their cards. So it's kind of cool to see, he's collecting kind of all the images going on behind him. I'm sure there's some deeper meaning to that, or maybe he's just hinting at what he's going to show here. It's interesting for the one in the bottom right hand corner that we seem to have this other planet in between, so maybe that's a moon of Tau Ceti, kind of in between the Marathon and the planet itself. So it's interesting to kind of see what they do with that. Also, it's red. I don't know. There's a few kind of different angles. Even the logo there is the updated logo, but it appears to be in red on my screen at least. And then also, we do have a 4th image back here, which even has some of the kind of dots that we saw when the original ARG was occurring, which ended up being something that had to be deciphered. So maybe something is kind of hiding in this background behind his head. Although just roughly scanning through right here, it doesn't look like he ever moves his head enough to see more than what we see in like any given frame, which appears to just be this little mark here and then the dots. Or it could be entirely nothing and I'm a lunatic. But regardless, guys, like I said, I'm doing this with one arm right now, but I still wanted to get a video out and share my thoughts about it, and also acknowledge that we didn't get a lot of new information really that kind of expanded things, but I am excited to hear you guys' thoughts about the runners that they did show, Thief and Stealth, and to hear what you guys think Bungie should do next, and maybe what you think the current timeline actually looks like. But until we get some more info, I will see you guys later. All right.